Good morning, good afternoon, maybe good evening, and welcome to this Wednesday webinar. It's good to see that we have a lot of people in this webinar today. Welcome to all of you. Just a quick sound check. Can somebody, sort of let me know if you can hear me okay? I see already somebody saying good morning. So it would be good if you could just let me know if, yes, sure. Thanks, Taha. Super. And I also see that you are finding the chat box. Please use the chat box to say hi, to introduce yourself, tell me where you're from, because it's always nice to know who we have on the call. I see that one person has, Joram, you found the unmute button, so that's good to know. We have 30 minutes today. And today we're going to discuss the topic of being hired as the fleet manager and now what? And maybe some of you do recognize this feeling like, oh, help, I'm tasked as the fleet manager, I'm hired as the fleet manager, but where do I start? What should I do? Where do I start? We have 30 minutes. I will try to keep my presentation for about 15 minutes, and then I would like to hear from you. I'm going to ask you questions. You can ask questions, and together we hope to learn more. So for those who don't know me, my name is Roos van Stijn, and I'm the development director with Fleet Forum, and it's great to see a lot of you here. Like I said, this 30 minutes, we're going to discuss what it means to be the fleet manager. And we developed this webinar specifically for those of you who either are completely new in the role of fleet manager, but also for those of you who might be looking at fleet management as one of your many other priorities. We know that in many of our organizations that we work with, that fleet management, especially if you don't have a large fleet, that fleet management might be part of your admin tasks or your procurement task or your sort of, oh, I'm also the HR manager or the security manager. So we wanted to address today, what fleet management means, but also the importance and sort of show with you a process that can help you to sort of get your head around fleet management in your organization. But first, I want to know a little bit from you. And what I would like to know, I will launch a poll. And what I have asked, what I would like you to answer is, how long have you been working as a fleet manager? So if it is correct, then you will see on the screen. You have some options, so less than 3 months. Maybe today is your first day. Between 3 and 6 months, between 1 and 3 years, 3 and 5 years. Maybe some of you say longer than 5 years. Let me see. And then, what if you are not a fleet manager? Taha, so if you are not a fleet manager, if your job title doesn't say fleet manager, but you might be admin with a responsibility for fleet management, or you might be a supply officer with a responsibility for fleet. In this webinar today, I consider you a fleet manager. So maybe the question is, how long have you been taken on responsibilities as a fleet manager? If you can answer it like that, it would be great. And I'm just going to give it a couple of seconds more. And then I see that people are also already addressing the other questions, like, is managing the fleet your only responsibility? It's either yes or no. So Taha, I would expect that you would answer no to this question. And then the last one, and people, we can be very honest here. When you think about fleet management, what comes to your mind? Do you think it is interesting? Do you think like, well, it gives me stress and headaches? Maybe some of you might find that it is boring. And maybe you think like, oh, it's an important function in my organization, or to me, it's an important function. Just to get us going. And I'll leave it for a couple more minutes. Or either seconds. Okay, I'm gonna share the results. So, okay, what I see is that the majority of you work already for a long time in fleet management. And I see a number of people that I recognize from previous trainings or webinars or other activities that Fleet Forum is doing. So it's great to have you here because we can all learn from each other, right? And then in second place, I would say it is the people who are relatively new to fleet management, so between 6 and 12 months. So this is good. It's great that you are here to develop your skills, your knowledge, and your ideas. With the second question, most of you do not have fleet management as your only responsibility. So it is like we said before, it is part of it's one part of many of your other responsibilities. And then the last question, fortunately, nobody said that fleet management is giving you stress and headaches. Nobody thinks that it is boring. So most of you say it's an important function. And yes, we do agree as Fleet Forum. And then also people are saying it is interesting. And maybe to go back to the stress and the headaches, I would hope that sometimes fleet gives you stress and headaches, and that's related to the importance of the function. When we talk about fleet management, we might think like, okay, it's about vehicles, it's about drivers, but also the fleet really has an important function to help your organization deliver their mandate or deliver their objectives and their goal to reach beneficiaries. And I would assume that sometimes it gives you headaches because how do you manage, how do you balance different priorities? And we will come back to that later. So when we look at fleet management, basically the definition of fleet management is that you are proactively managing the transport assets of your organization. So it is your vehicles, your motorcycles, but maybe also in some cases your boats. Even though Fleet Forum, we are not focusing on boats. Trucks, rental vehicles, outsourced vehicles, everything that you use to transport, and the people who use it, and how you manage those assets. So that's basically the definition. And if you look at the function and objectives of fleet management, then what you see on the left-hand side, there's a lot of functions within fleet management. So we are not only talking about buying vehicles and disposing vehicles, but we are also talking about how do we manage our drivers, how do we manage the people who are using our vehicles and our fleet, the passengers, the program staff. What is our vision on how would we do maintenance? Would we like to do that in-house, or do we outsource that? But also, how do we look at data, and how do we use our data to get information on how we are doing? And all these things should add to the objectives that we would have with our fleet management. And I listed 3 of them. So the first one would be good stewardship of transport assets. And what we mean with that is that how do we use our fleet in a way that it's used in the way how it is intended to be. And let me give you an example. For example, if you have programs and you have vehicles for that, then how do we make sure that these vehicles are not used for private use? That's one of example, right? Then the second one is an objective of fleet management is to be effective and to be cost efficient, have a cost efficient fleet operation with the least impact on the environment. And that becomes more and more important. As one of the functions in the blue boxes, you do see sustainability management. And we know in many organizations, environmental sustainability becomes more and more important. How do we reduce our negative impact that we have from operating the fleet of vehicles? And the last one, of course, is safety and security of staff and other road users. In the blue boxes we see topics around journey management. So how do we make sure that our journeys are planned and that it doesn't lead to insecure or unsafe situations for either our staff or other road users? How do we track our movements? Do we want to do that because we are operating in an environment where that is needed? And then also, how do we manage the health and safety of drivers and everybody else who works in a transport or fleet-related function? So, I was already mentioning the headaches that you might have from fleet. And I'm going to ask you a question around balancing priority. Now, let's say you work in an organization that says, I want you to have the cheapest fleet that you can get. So to incur the lowest possible cost. How would that impact, let's say, your readiness to reach beneficiaries at all times? How do you see friction there, or maybe you can align that? Maybe you can leave your comments in the chat box as we go. Let's see if there's people typing. So my question to you is, the balancing priorities with your fleet can sometimes give you headaches, right? So maybe on the one hand, your management is saying, hey, I want you to operate this fleet in the cheapest way that you can. So don't spend so much money on fleet. But on the other hand, your organization might also say, oh, we need to be ready to reach beneficiaries at all times. So how could that give you headaches at the end of the day? And I see that somebody is typing. And let me just give it a moment to see what comes out. Or maybe you wanna use the other example. If your organization say, I want to run the safest operation that we can, the safest fleet, how would that impact your readiness to reach beneficiaries at all times? Do you see friction there? Do you not see friction there? And now I see people typing. Maybe by consolidating trips, yeah. Sadiq, yeah, sometimes delays, yeah, exactly. So maybe if you say, well, we want to operate the safest fleet possible, then it might be that you have to put in place restrictions on when you can move, because the safety on the road might not be in line with the criteria that your organization has on safety. So you might not move at certain times of the day. Hassan, maybe the safest things would higher the cost. Yeah. Farah, sustainable, exactly. So maybe if you want to have the most sustainable fleet, you need to put in place elements in your fleet that might not be the cheapest, right? And it's not always that if you want to be safe or the most sustainable, then you can never operate at the lowest cost, because a lot of elements in safe fleet management and sustainable fleet management also do have a very, very positive impact on your costs. But sometimes these things can give you headaches because your program staff might jump up and down and say, oh, I need to go, I need to reach my beneficiaries now, I need to travel, travel, travel. And on the other hand, your safety and security officers might say, oh, well, but not at this time because it is not safe, right? So there is friction and that might give you headaches. Now, the benefits of fleet management. We already discussed it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but if you implement fleet management and if you have professional fleet management, meaning that you use a plan, do, check, act cycle to plan your actions, to put your actions in place, to measure your results and then to analyze if you need to make improvements, then professional fleet management can lead to a reduced impact on the environment from your fleet, better support to programs, a reduction of fatalities and injuries from road crashes, and the less funding you spend on transport, the more available is for program activities, of course. And your donors will be happy with that. So what I have for you, and what Fleet Forum has developed over the years, is a roadmap for fleet management. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is maybe to bring home the message that fleet management is not something that you do in a week. It's not something that you do just between one meeting and another meeting. But if you want to professionalize your fleet management, then you need to make a plan and you need to stick to the plan and you need to evaluate the plan. So what we have here, and I'm not going to go through all of the steps, is an outline for a improvement program for fleet management, where first we say, okay, you have to define your organizational context, and that goes back to A, what is your mandate and how does fleet relate to that? And B, what are your organizational priorities? Is it safety? Is it environmental impact? And there you need to see, okay, how does fleet fit into that? Then once you have done that, you want to set an annual improvement ambition. So where do you want to go? And we really, as Fleet Forum, we do encourage you to dream big, to say, oh, I want my fleet to have a reduction in emissions by 20% or 50%. Because if you dream big, then you are also much better prepared to achieve that. And you will look at your dream and say, hey, this is what I want to do. Compare it to when people thought that they wanted to go to the moon. And everybody was looking at them and say, oh, you're crazy. That's never, ever going to work, right? And they believed in that dream and they achieved it. And it's the same with the dream that you would have for your fleet. So set your annual improvement ambition and make it big. Be ambitious. And then step 4 and 5, very, very important, collect your data, set a baseline, see how you are doing now, see what your performance is like, and then, of course, analyze your data. And then a step that sometimes is forgotten, but engage your senior management. And that links back to the step 2 and 3. If you can link your ambition, if you can link your big dream to your organizational context, then it is much easier to engage your senior management, because your senior management might have a shared dream. They also want to reduce the emissions. They also want to have no road crash fatalities and injuries. They also want to reach more beneficiaries. So if you can link that to them, to their dream, then you are already in a much better position to achieve it. And what you see on this slide as well is that this will take you between 2 to 6 months. And like I said, this is not something that you do over a week. This is something where you need to take the time to understand, to talk to people, and to set your goals, and collect your data and analyze your data. And especially the data, it is important to do that over a period of time. We would say do it at least for 5 months, because then it also allows you to take out all the anomalies, if that's the right word. For example, if you are operating countries with rainy seasons and dry seasons, if you are operating in organizations that might have specific activities for a short period of time during the year, then you can sort of look at a longer period, and then it sort of gives you a more realistic overview of the performance of your fleet. So 2 to 6 months, that's what we are talking about. And let me just go there. Then after those 2 to 6 months, then you want to set your priorities, because you cannot work on everything at the same time. And with that also comes that you would look at opportunities. Sometimes you do have what we call low-hanging fruit. For example, if there is an organizational audit going on, that's an opportunity for you to work with the auditor and identify, okay, so how can I get the auditors interested in fleet management, for example, around fuel consumption. And fuel consumption helps you to reduce, managing the fuel consumption helps you to reduce also the environmental impact, right? So define these opportunities that you might have, or the signing of climate charters by the organization. That's an opportunity as well. Or road traffic crashes that are happening around you in the country or maybe in your own organization. Even though it's not a nice situation, but for you it can be an opportunity to set, well, to identify your priorities, but also to see how you can increase the awareness for fleet management. And then you want to set KPIs, because you want to have key performance indicators that tell you how you are doing and how the fleet is performing, and if you're on the right track. From there, you also want to have accountabilities and responsibilities identified, meaning that in your team, you might have people who are responsible for data. You have drivers, and you want to be clear on what their responsibilities and accountabilities are. And then, of course, you want to make sure that you have the policies and procedures that are supporting your goal, that are supporting your priorities, and and those are clear for everyone. An important role for fleet managers is also to build capacity, and building capacity it can be in the form of training. But also by talking to drivers, by conducting 5-minute talks in the morning to repeat your dream, to repeat what you would like to achieve with your fleet management, so that drivers, that the way of thinking and your priorities are also in their mind, and that they are also part of that. So building capacity in your team is important as well. Then going from when I mentioned plan, do, check, act, of course, you want to then start implementing your actions, and then as a last part, measure and analyze if what you are doing, if that is the right thing to do, and if you have to make a change of action, change your course of action, and implement other actions that help you to achieve your goals, and that help you to support the organization with fleet management. I see that I took a bit longer, so I will not. I will sort of say, if you have questions, now is the time to ask them. What I can do is I can open the Q&A. Now, if you have a question, type them in the chat box and then use the little question mark that is with in that chat box so I can see them on screen. And I can also make them visible for all of you. Now, let me see. I see some comments, but there were people who are saying, oh, yeah, I'm responsible for fleet management, but not only that, also finance and admin and procurement. Yeah, and there's also competing priorities. Remember when we talked about frictions, like, okay, how do you determine what is most important? Is it finance, is it admin, or is it procurement? Or how do you define that? These are challenges that we face. And I see strengthening the office travel plan so that trips to the same destination are combined. Yeah, I'm very happy to see that in Mungana. I think vehicle share, and Gada is also saying that vehicle sharing within the office is a great way to reduce your costs, to increase your safety, because remember, the lesser the vehicles on the roads, the better it is for the safety of everybody, but also to reduce your emissions. How can you analyze data? That's a broad question, and that requires a full webinar or maybe even a full training. Let me see. How you analyze data is first you collect it. You set parameters, how often you want to collect it, and how frequently you want to analyze it. Most organizations do it on a monthly basis. And what you would like to know, if you look at your data, is to say, okay, on average, this is how my fleet should perform, and how does my fleet relate to that. So for example, let's say that on average your vehicles are using 12 liters of fuel per 100 kilometers, right? So now when you collect the data, then you can see if all of your fleet are meeting that target. Now let's say that all of your vehicles are meeting that. All of your vehicles are using 12 liters per 100 kilometers, then you can say, hey, maybe we can even do better. Maybe we can even set it to 11 liters per 100 kilometers. And what are the actions that I should take? Maybe you should work with your drivers not to use the air conditioning all the time. Maybe you want to look at idling in traffic jams, or the idling that sometimes drivers do before they start off, because it is so nice for the passengers to be in a fresh vehicles, right? So these are things that you want to do with your data analysis. And I see a lot of examples given in the chat. This is a great question. Let me mark as a question, and now I'm gonna publish it. Omer, thank you. As we are aware, fleet management is more for software follow-up, and how can we use fleet management in rural areas which have not even an internet connection and software? So I think that over the last couple of years, many organizations have gone into the area of using software to manage their fleet, right? And there's a variety of software providers out there. There are also ways where you can just use an Excel spreadsheet to manage your fleet. And when we send out at the end of the webinar, we will send all of you a link to the recording. I will also make sure that we have a link to our knowledge platform where you can find an example of an Excel spreadsheet where you can list your vehicles, you can list how many kilometers, you can list the liters of fuel, you can list your costs of maintenance and repair, you can even list how many how many days the vehicle was in the garage or workshop, to give you an idea around availability. And there you can manage, if you fill that in a systematic way, if you look at that every month, then you can also use that even without an internet connection and software. But it requires your time. You need to plan your time to fill it, and you need to plan time to look at the analysis. But good question, Umar. Good, super. Let me see if we have one last question. Yeah, I see that there is. Let me just display this one as well. David, training drivers about eco-driving principles in order to reduce on the cost of maintenance and environmental impact. Yeah, so eco-driving, making sure that your drivers understand and know the concept of eco-driving, and that they know what to do to adhere to these principles, is a great way to reduce the emissions of your fleet. And to reduce the cost of maintenance, the cost of fuel. So like I said, there you have one action that can really help you to serve more. It even, you might not have thought of it, but it even increases safety, because one of the main well, first, I think big principle of eco-driving is to drive in an anticipating manner, meaning that drivers should always look far ahead what is happening on the road, so that they are able to anticipate on that. So, for example, if they see traffic lights in the distance, they should already reduce their speed. And of course, when we reduce speed, then we also are increasing our safety. So that's a great way. I see that we are already at the end of this webinar. So I just want to say thank you for your attention. Thank you for being here. And thank you for asking your questions and leaving your comments. Next week, we do have a webinar, same time, same place. And then I hope to see all of you again. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, we will share the recorded version of this webinar with you. And I will also insert a link to the spreadsheet that I was talking about. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day and see you next time. Bye-bye.